Hello, everybody. Welcome back to today's top 10 topics of the week for, I'm sorry, not of the week, but October 27, 2021. So, today is your opportunity to build the tomorrow which you want, and another day to prepare ourselves for our success for the civil services examination. So, let us take a look at the topics that I will be discussing with you today. First of all is framework to manage the drone traffic was notified, and this was given in the Hindu. Center plans 2 mobile hospitals, again in the Hindu. The draft rules seek to make the airports disabled friendly, the Hindu, for the vulnerable sections of the society. The first IVF calf of Bunny Buffalo born, this was in news 2-3 days back. And the Home Minister is on a visit to Jammu and Kashmir for the very first time since the scrapping of the special status happened. Shringla, the Foreign Secretary, addresses the BIMSTEC conference. Center and Asian Development Bank have signed a loan of $4.5 million project to support mobility in Mizoram. Union Finance Minister attended the 6th annual meeting of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. HESI holds order on the quota in promotions, and the government launches the Green Day Ahead market. So the first is the framework to manage the drone traffic has been notified. So now recently the Ministry of Civil Aviation has notified the traffic management rules for the drones. These rules pertain to management of the traffic of drones below 1,000 feet. It should be noted that the current rules, that is the air traffic management rules in the civil aviation sector, are not designed to manage the traffic from the unmanned aircraft, the other word for drones. So if the government wants to integrate these management of the drones with the existing air traffic management rules for civil aviation, then there will be certain changes that will be need to be done to these drones, and this will become bulky and expensive. Therefore, the government has brought in new rules for this. Let me tell you that the unmanned aerial vehicles have been given much importance as of recent, especially its use in various sectors such as disaster management, security. Also, there have been news of its usage. Recently, the government has used it to send medicines to far off places. Drones have been used extensively during the COVID-19, especially to inculcate the social distancing norms, and police people also use the drones, especially during the lockdowns, to make sure that the lockdown is being effectively implemented. And there is a wide and a vibrant market in India for these unmanned aerial vehicles. There are many startups that are being developed now, and they are working in this drone sector. So the recent steps taken by the government for these drones are that in September 15th, the government approved a production-linked incentive scheme for drones and drone components with an allocation of Rs 120 crore spread over 3 financial years. The drone rules were notified on August 25th, and it eased the regulation of drone operations in India by reducing the number of forms that are needed to be filled up to operate them from 25 to 5, which is a major difference, and the decreasing in the type of fees also that is being charged for the operator from 72 to 4. So these drones are looking at developing a vibrant market for the unmanned aerial vehicles. Also, this above framework has been issued under the Drone Rules 2021. So what do the new rules say? Just to give you a brief idea, it allows the third-party service providers to give services such as registration, flight planning, dynamic deconfliction, access to supplementary weather data, terrain data, position data. Also, a set of supplementary service providers will be permitted under the framework to provide services such as insurance and data analytics. Now, a digital sky platform will continue to be an interface for the government stakeholders to provide approvals and permissions to the drone operators. All the drones share their real-time location through this network to the center. It says that the third party service providers will first be deployed in small geographical areas and then will be increased gradually. Now, these service providers are permitted to charge the drone operators a small fee, and a small portion might have to be shared with the Airports Authority of India, which manages the air traffic management rules. I have given you a brief description of the drone market in India. Now, it is said that it is going to reach $1.21 billion in 2021. It is likely to touch 1.81 billion in 2026. So the market is going to grow at a compound annual rate of 14.61%. Now, the growth in the sector is also spurred by a number of startups that are emerging to provide third party services and operation of these drones. They are also attracting huge investments, especially due to the importance of these vehicles in transportation, agriculture. Many drones are being used to spray fertilizers also, defense for security and management of border areas, law enforcement, as I've discussed earlier with you with regard to the enforcement of the social distancing norms during the COVID and other now in other areas of law enforcement also, surveillance and emergency response. Recently, when the Home Minister Amit Shah had been to Jammu and Kashmir, that is just yesterday, drones were used for surveillance, especially in that region, to keep intact the security situation during his visit. So, drones are here to play a big role in the economy of the country, and it is going to be used in various sectors. Now, as per the size of the drone, the recently notified rules of drone in August categorize these drones into nano drones, micro and small drones, and medium and large drones. Moving on, another important news today regarding the health, which is really going to change the way disaster management or emergency like situations will be dealt, is that now the center is planning two mobile hospitals. So, COVID 19 has provided us an opportunity along with a set of challenges that came about to boost the healthcare infrastructure. The opportunity that COVID 19 provided us is in the manner in which India realized how much more it needed to develop its healthcare infrastructure and also the services. Now, including laboratories, hospitals, diagnostic facilities at all the levels of healthcare. This is what is done by the Pradhan Mantri Ayushman Bharat Health Infrastructure Mission, which I discussed with you all just 2 to 3 days back and which was launched very recently. Now, for the first time in Asia, two container-based hospitals will be developed by the Government of India. These will be equipped with comprehensive medical facilities and they will be stationed at Chennai and Delhi and kept ready. Now, during any emergency situation, they will be swiftly mobilized by rail or air to respond to any calamity and disaster in the country. The container-based hospitals will help the government to respond in a timely and a robust manner to emergency situations. This, along with the above health infrastructure mission, will bring about a paradigm shift in India's healthcare infrastructure and make it more resilient. So, under the umbrella Pan India Ayushman Bharat, the primary, secondary, tertiary, digital, resilient healthcare system is being developed. Health emergency operation centers and container-based mobile hospitals will further build the capacity of the healthcare in the country. It should be remembered that providing affordable, accessible, quality healthcare is the basis of right to life, and also it is an important part of the Sustainable Development Goal 3. Now, according to my view, such container hospitals should be deployed not only in Delhi and Chennai, but also in more areas and more metropolitan cities, so that especially the disaster prone areas, the flood prone areas, etc., where health response can act immediately during the time of need. I think the government must come up with more such container based hospitals. The next most important is draft rules seek to make the airports disabled friendly. Now, this is helpful in the GS Paper 3 infrastructure and also in GS Paper 2 policies for the vulnerable sections of the society. If you've been following the news very keenly, an actress named as Sudha Chandran had narrated a trauma that she went through in the airport because she has a prosthetic leg, and the manner in which the infrastructure in the country is not very disabled friendly, or not very friendly to the Divyangjan. This was also made noted to the government by the Supreme Court, who asked the government recently that it should take the vaccines to the doorstep of the people, especially persons such as old aged persons, and also the Divyangjan who cannot come to the hospital and get themselves vaccinated. Now, it should be noted that the Government of India is implementing an Accessible India campaign, but it's very sad that not much has been still done. The government has to make the infrastructure and all the civic amenities accessible to the disabled or the specially abled persons, or who are called as Divyangjan in the country. It is one of the basic rights, and also it ensures all round development to these persons because they can avail the facilities equally on par like the other citizens of the country. Now, the Civil Aviation Ministry has issued draft guidelines named as Draft Accessibility Standard Guidelines for Civil Aviation after the episode of the actress of Sudha Chandran for aviation sector such as the airlines and airports to ensure that the disabled people can travel at ease. Let me remind you that India is a signatory to the United Nations Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities. It is on the basis of this convention that the government has brought about the Right of Persons with Disabilities Act, which enacted various provisions regarding the rights of the persons with disabilities. India is also implementing the Accessible India campaign and also has established various institutes, one of them being National Institute of Mental Health and Rehabilitation, to address the issues relating to psychosocial disability. The Act mandates the provincial governments to take appropriate measures to ensure that the persons with disability enjoy their rights equally along with others. Now, the Asia Pacific Decade of Persons with Disabilities from the year 2013 to the years 2022 is being observed to raise awareness about the rights of persons with disabilities. Let me tell you that the Indian strategy is being adopted to achieve the goals mentioned under the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So, just to give you a brief idea of what the draft guidelines say, they say that the airport operators must make special arrangements for screening of persons with special needs so that the process is carried out keeping the dignity and the privacy of the passenger in mind. Now, during the screening of prosthetics, the airport security, which is handled by the CISF, might use X-rays, explosive trace detection devices, or visual checks according to the requirement. Now, the passenger who has a prosthetic limb will first pass through the door frame metal detector and should be taken to a private screening point and made to sit there comfortably. This passenger will then receive additional screening. So this is just a brief idea I've given you. It goes on to say that in rare cases where there is sufficient justification of the passenger, X-ray screening may be resorted to. Adding the justification for subjecting the prosthetic limb to X-ray screening shall be recorded by the screener in the registry. Disabled persons should inform the airline about the complete requirement 48 hours before the scheduled departure. Now, so that the aircraft carrier along whom they are traveling can make the necessary arrangements. It also includes provisions regarding the wheelchair at the airport. Now, the civil aviation has given 3 weeks of time for their feedback under the rules. So the next most important topic is now the first IVF calf bunny buffalo has been born. And this is a very good news, especially for the livestock sector in our country. Now, the first IVF calf bunny breed of buffaloes, which are found primarily in Gujarat Kutch region, was born to the farmer in Gir Somnath district. This follows the first Murrah batch of buffaloes that underwent the process in Pune. Now, the process was carried out to enhance the number of genetically superior buffaloes, especially the indigenous one, to increase the milk production. Also, it should be remembered that unlike the Murrah and the Jafarabadi breeds, the Bunny breed is considered as climate resilient and can withstand harsh conditions, including the water scarcity. Now, Bunny breed of buffalo is known for its resilience and high milk producing capacity in arid environment. Producing calves by deploying ART will pave the way for rapid multiplication of superior animals, especially the indigenous breeds, at a much faster pace. Let me tell you that the scientists were asking the government to improve the population of the indigenous breeds of cattle in the country because of their resilience capacity and also their milk production. Now, the technology can help the country to multiply the population of genetically superior buffaloes, resulting in high milk yield. In the IVF process, an outstanding cow or a buffalo in a herd is first identified as a donor, following which then the embryo is matured artificially in the laboratory. It is then fertilized with the best quality semen in test tubes and then transferred to the recipient cow or buffalo. Let us look at what is the significance of this development, that is birth of a bunny calf by IVF. The success provides the proof of using IVF to multiply the breeds, especially high yielding varieties, climate resilient cattle breeds in the country, to increase the cattle population. Livestock is another major form of income generation for the farmers and especially more so in the arid regions. Now, a cow can give birth to 50 calves on an average through IVF, as against the capacity to deliver a maximum of 8 to 10 calves in a lifetime. India has more than 109 million buffaloes, that are 56% of the world's buffalo population. Now, if you look at the data about the milk yield with regard to the indigenous cows, in 2018-19, it says that the indigenous cows have a milk yield of 3 kg per day per animal, whereas the crossbreed exhibits a milk yield of 7.85 kg per day per animal. Now, therefore, to improve the dairy production in India, breed improvement through crossbreeding becomes the need of the hour for the country. Currently, it should be remembered that 3 methods of crossbreeding are used in India. One is IVF, the second one is ET, that is embryo transfer system, and artificial insemination. The government is giving a boost to this process. Also, this is important from your science and technology point of view in paper 3. Now, the next most important is that the Home Minister Amit Shah was a visit to Jammu and Kashmir to review the security situation. Also, his visit is significant because recently the region has come into news. One, because of the proximity to Afghanistan and after the Taliban takeover, and now recently, just a few days back, there has been a spate of killings of civilians, mostly the non-local laborers and minorities in the region by terrorist organization. So this was the Home Minister's first visit since Jammu and Kashmir special status under Article 370 was revoked, and the state was bifurcated into the Union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh on August 5th, 2019. Since then, the government has taken a number of steps to ensure that development comes to the region on par of the other regions of the country, and more so keeping in mind the manner in which the state functions and also the strategic importance of the state from the security point of view after the revocation of Article 370. He inaugurated a 2-phase multidisciplinary research center and laid the foundation of the 3rd phase of IIT. The government is also focusing on developing the education, tourist and infrastructure on a wide scale in these 2 union territories. He also flagged off the first international flight services from Srinagar to Sharjah in UAE. This step has been taken to boost trade and tourism in Jammu and Kashmir. Let me just give you a brief idea of the steps that the government has been taken for the development of this region, which is also important from the mains point of view with regard to regional development in your paper 2. Now, the Prime Minister's development package was announced in 2015 at the cost of 80,000 crore rupees. Jammu and Kashmir Infrastructure Development Finance Corporation has been set up to spur the investment and catering to the financing for infrastructure development. The central government has approved a new central sector scheme for industrial development in Jammu and Kashmir with an outlay of 28,000 crore to boost industrial activity. It has also set up for setting up of new industrial estates, and for ease of doing business, the government of Jammu and Kashmir has created a land bank. The government is also focusing on the fruits and orchids sector, especially the agriculture and allied activities, and the handicraft and handloom sector. And a new wool processing handicraft handloom policy has been brought about for promotion and development of handicrafts and handlooms in sector in this region. Recently, with regard to the grassroots governance development, the government has brought about amendments to the Jammu and Kashmir Panchayat Act, where District Development Council elections have been held to bring about local governance and strengthen such institutions. The next important is that BIMSTEC conference was addressed by the Foreign Secretary Harsh Shringla. Now, during this conference, he just spelled out certain important collaborations and plans that the BIMSTEC is coming about with. I've just mentioned a few here. So the BIMSTEC comprises Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, Sri Lanka from South Asia, and Myanmar and Thailand from Southeast Asia. BIMSTEC, India is looking at BIMSTEC very keenly after as an alternative to SAARC, also, as the international relation analysis have been saying, because of the conflict between India and Pakistan after the Pulwama attack. And SAARC has not been functioning as much as it should have been done after the recent conflict between India and Pakistan. However, it met during the COVID-19 to bring about and set forth a strategy to tackling the pandemic situation. Now, the Foreign Secretary Harsh Shringla was addressing a national symposium. So, he said that the leaders were working on finalizing a motor vehicles pact and a coastal shipping agreement which will boost connectivity between the two regions. Now, the BIMSTEC master plan for transport connectivity, which was decided during the 17th ministerial meeting held in April 2021, finalized under India's chairmanship of the expert group, envisages a seamless multimodal transport system across the region. Now, this transport connectivity plan will benefit India, as India is developing the dedicated Eastern and Western corridor and also the Golden Quadrilateral. Also, there is the the East Coast corridor which is coming, which will benefit from this transport connectivity. Now, this is to stimulate intra-regional trade and investment in the region. It identifies 264 projects requiring an investment of 126 billion over a 10-year period from 2018 to 2028. Now, New Delhi is looking at boosting BIMSTEC in a bid to energize trade and connectivity in South Asia. Pradhan Mantri Narendra Modi had invited the leaders of the BIMSTEC countries in the swearing-in ceremony in 2019, these being neighboring countries of India, and in 2014 he had invited the SAARC countries. So the plan is to develop an energy grid and boosting the electricity trade through establishing of a BIMSTEC grid interconnection. So, in a way, we can say that these are the areas in which the BIMSTEC countries seek to cooperate or enhance the cooperation, and these are the initiatives that are taken to boost the trade and connectivity in the BIMSTEC countries. Security and disaster management is also a major concern for all the countries in this region, and these are the two areas in which India along with the other countries are looking to work. Now, the Bay of Bengal occupies 0.6% of the global ocean area, but it is responsible for a large number of cyclones, as we see every year, and also 4 out of 5 cyclone deaths occur in this region. in the world. The countries also lie in one of the most active seismic zones as the Indian plate is pushing into the Eurasian plate, and therefore the Himalayan region and the other areas, especially the northeast, are earth seismic prone regions. Now, India has been giving importance to the BIMSTEC and is taking various initiatives. For example, it is hosting the BIMSTEC Center for Weather and Climate, and which is now fully functional, which provides disaster warnings to the neighboring countries. Also, the Foreign Secretary mentioned that India is taking the lead for disaster management, and it will be organizing a tri services humanitarian assistance and disaster relief exercise towards the end of this year. In the 17th ministerial meeting, which was held in April 2021, the meeting which was chaired by Sri Lanka, important decisions were taken. In the right side, I've just given you the importance of BIMSTEC. In the diagram, you can see it was founded in 1997 through the Bangkok Declaration. And the first summit was held in Thailand. It accounts for 22% of the world's population. All these countries are very young countries and with burgeoning markets. It has a combined GDP of $2.7 trillion, 2.7 trillion. One fourth of the world's trade in goods occur across the Bay every year. Now, 6 focus areas of the BIMSTEC are trade, technology, energy, transport, tourism, and fisheries. India has been giving focus to BIMSTEC through various steps, such as the BIMSTEC Startup Conclave, which was held in January 2021, BIMSTEC Disaster Management Exercise in Puri, the Conference for Combating Drug Trafficking for BIMSTEC Countries, the BIMSTEC Seminar on Climate Smart Farming Systems, the Capacity Building Workshop for Informed Urban Planning in Gujarat, and the BIMSTEC Military Exercise and Army Chiefs Conclave. So all these have been conducted by India to improve its cooperation with the BIMSTEC countries. Now, the next important one is the Center and the Asian Development Bank have signed a $4.5 million project for supporting mobility in Mizoram. Now, the Center and the Asian Development Bank have signed this project for ADB to finance this urban mobility in Aizawl, that is the capital of Mizoram. Urban mobility in Aizawl, the center of Mizoram's administrative and service industry, is severely constrained due to rapid and unplanned urbanization, which is leading to traffic congestion and impacts road safety. Briefly, I've given you India and ADB's relation, which is important from GS paper 2 and not 3 point of view, and also GS paper 3 with regard to economic development and growth, especially GS paper 2 with regard to regional organizations and international organizations, their mandate and functioning. Now, India is a founding member of the Asian Development Bank, which came about in 1966. It is the country is ADB's 4th largest shareholder and a top borrower since 2010. Now, in 2020, ADB provided swift support to India in COVID-19 response. This is very important. The bank fast-tracked $1.5 billion loan to meet the immediate priorities to upgrade hospital facilities, increase the test, treat and track capacity, and to support social protection measures for immediate relief to the poor, women, and other vulnerable groups. To elevate the pandemic's effect, ADB is also expanding assistance to protect small businesses, strengthen the primary health care in urban areas, helping in education, social protection, and infrastructure development. Some of the important projects that ADB is taking up in India are there are many, but I've just mentioned a few. In finance, it is adopting fintech, helping India adopt fintech and digital payment system. In agriculture, it is helping the state of Maharashtra in agribusiness network. In health, it is supporting India in the health system project, and also in housing, it is helping Tamil Nadu in resilient housing for the poor. Now, as I said earlier, the bank was established in 1966, and it envisions a prosperous, inclusive, resilient, sustainable Asia and Pacific, and aims to eradicate extreme poverty in the region. It assists its member and partners by providing loans, technical assistance, grants, and equity investments to promote social and economic development. The other most important is that the Union Finance Minister has attended the sixth annual meeting of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Now, every year, the annual meeting is conducted by the Board of Governors, and they take important decisions with regard to matters pertaining to the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and the future vision. India is a founding member and a second largest shareholder. It is also one of the largest project portfolios in this bank. Now, it was proposed in 2013 by China, and it is a multilateral financial institution. It aims to improve the economic and social outcomes in Asia. It is headquartered at Beijing, China. The bank's governance structure is composed of Board of Governors, which is the top level highest decision making body, and it is composed of one governor each from the member state of the bank. It meets once a year. It was developed as an alternative to the IMF and World Bank that are mostly dominated by the Western countries. The next most important is that the Supreme Court holds its order on quota in promotions. Now, this is important from the GS paper 2 with regard to judiciary and also the policies for the most vulnerable sections of the society. Let us see what the Supreme Court has said now to the request of the government. The Supreme Court reserved its judgment on a petition seeking it sought firm guidelines and basis for granting of reservations in promotion for the communities from the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. Now, the government said that in spite of 75 years of independence coming, and it has not been able to bring the members of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes on par, and therefore was looking forward to provide the opportunity for SC and STs to have reservations in promotion. So the Supreme Court asked the government to justify its demand or its request for reservations in promotions, and asked the government to submit the proper data to show that there is inadequate representation of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes in public employment to provide them reservation in promotion. Now let us go into the details and see what the Supreme Court has said now. So in 2006, the Supreme Court delivered its judgment in a case called as M. Nagaraj versus the Union of India. In this case, the court validated the Parliament's decision to extend a reservation to these two communities in promotions. However, the court, along with validating the Parliament's decision, said that it lays down conditions on the basis of which it will decide whether the reservations can be availed in promotion or no. So, the Nagaraj judgment laid down 3 conditions that any state must meet prior to granting SC and ST persons a reservation in promotion. First is, promotion has happened when the person is in the job and he is promoted to a higher position. So, the first condition is that the state must show the backwardness of the class. Second, that it should show that the class is inadequately represented in the position or service for which the government wants to reserve seats in promotion. Finally, it must show that the reservations are in the interest of administrative efficiency. So, in the Indira Sawhney case, the bench ruled that reservations and appointments granted by the state under Article 16(4) do not apply to promotions. Then Parliament brought out certain amendments to nullify the effect of this judgment in the Indira Sawhney case. So, Article 16(4)(a) says that the state can make a law regarding reservation in promotion for people from the SC/ST community. Article 16(4)(b) says that the reserved promotion posts for SC and ST that remained nullified can be carried forward to the subsequent year. Article 16(4)(b) also ensures the ceiling on reservation quota, which was capped at 50% by the Indira Sawhney, does not apply to the subsequent years. Article 335 mandates that the reservation has to be balanced with maintaining of efficiency. Now, for any reservation for SC and STs In promotions, the above three conditions must be satisfied. So, since the Nagraj judgment, many states and also the centers found it very difficult to implement this concept of reservation in promotion, and various high courts have also struck down the policies of various states that provided reservation in promotions. Now, all these come as appeals from the high courts to the Supreme Court. So, when the Supreme Court asked the government, that is the Attorney General who is representing the Government of India, to provide the basis or any data on which it says that the SC and STs are inadequately represented, so therefore they need to have reservation and promotion, the law officer said that till 1975, 3.5% of SCs and 0.62% of STs were in the government employment, and this is the average figure. In 2008, the figure for SC/STs in the government employment has come to 17.5 and 6.8, which are still low, and therefore the government justifies its demand for the quota in reservation for promotion on the basis of this data. As I said earlier, in 2006 ruling in the case of M. Nagaraj versus Union of India, the court had placed three conditions for the center or the states to fulfill. Article 16 of the Constitution requires equality in the matters of public employment and provides the basis for reservation for SC/ST in employment. The same article also deals with reservation for SC/ST in promotion. Now, the Supreme Court, as we know, has reserved its verdict, and it is to be seen what step the Supreme Court will take next. So, the government launches the Green Day Ahead Market. Now, this is something related to the renewable energy sector, and Day Ahead Market is a type of short-term markets where energy is traded. Now, usually in power trading, you have both wholesale and retail, and short-term markets and long-term markets. In long-term markets, the agreements are bilateral between the DISCOMs and the power generation companies, where you have power purchase agreements and long-term agreements like up to 1 year, 1 to 5 years, or even 5 to 25 years. So the power generator signs a MOU with the power distribution entity for these periods of time. In the wholesale, that is a long-term power trading market, power is purchased in bulk based on preliminary demand estimate. So they make a demand estimate of how much might be the demand at that period of time in 1 year or 2 years, and on the basis of that, power is purchased through an MOU along with on the basis of power purchase agreements from these generators. Now, the actual delivery of the power occurs after setting of the selling rate for various consumer categories. Like consumer is another, you will have another different rates for commercial use, industrial use, and household use. So the participants in the long-term market and the short-term include both the GENCOs, DISCOMs, traders, power exchanges, and load dispatch sectors. Now, apart from these fixed purchase that are long-term, they are sometimes that there will be an immediate requirement for electricity in the grid for a short-term period. Now, such requirements might occur because of high power demand during certain period of time. For example, now you have Diwali coming up, so everybody will use a lot of power, especially for lights, additional lights that are used to decorate the house, and this is one example. Also, in the rural areas, usually in the morning the power demand is more because the farmers go to the field. Then another example might be in summer season. In summer season, usually March to June or something like that, the power demand is more because of wide scale use of ACs. Now, these to cater to the immediate requirements of electricity, you have certain power trading markets which are short term, that which trade for like 1 day or certain period of hours or 15 days, etc. So these purchases take place in power trading markets depending on the delivery period. Now, these markets, depending on the delivery period, can be categorized as a real term market, day ahead market, and term ahead market. So some key short term markets are the real time market, the day ahead market, and the term ahead market. based on the delivery period. In real time market, these markets bring together the consumer and seller just 1 hour before the power delivery. In day ahead market, the power delivery usually occurs the next day after the transactions are contracted. And in term ahead market, in the power transfer schedule can vary from 3 hours later on the same way up to about 11 days in the future. So the green day ahead market which has been developed is with regard to the renewable energy sector. Now it has been taken as a welcome step because this will develop the short term market for the renewable energy sector. This decision will boost the short term markets for renewable energy. Presently, there is the Power Exchange of India and the Indian Energy Exchange. So, with the development of these short term markets, more and more participants will come to invest in the renewable power so that they can participate in this short term market where power is purchased and sold. With more and more participants, there will be more demand for infrastructure in renewable sector. There will be more demand for employment in the renewable sector, and also there will be healthy competition, and therefore the price also at the end when there is good amount of competition, the consumer benefits. There will also be more contribution to the renewable energy to the energy mix. So this development of green day ahead market is seen as a welcome step for development of short term markets in the renewable sector, and on the whole as a boost to the renewable energy sector of the country. So this brings me to the end of the top 10 topics of the day. See you all tomorrow. Until then, bye bye.